All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 19th, 2022 regular meeting of council. We just exited executive session, and my understanding is that we vote to reconvene our regular session. So, Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Housh.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Brown. Yes. DeVore Leonard.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Yes. All right, great.
Why do I not see her?
She's up there.
Oh, there we go.
Right there in the corner. Okay, and we get to start off with a swearing in. And Johanna, if you want to join me at the podium. Okay, yes, and we're all signed, sealed, delivered. All right, so you want to raise your hand and repeat after me. I solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States and the state of Ohio, and that I will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Environmental Commissioner. All right, thank you, Johanna. All right. Hey, and I think you might have got one last time, but there's an extra one. There you go. All right, thanks, Johanna. I need another one. Thank you for your service. Okay, and we are going to jump into announcements. All right, Carmen, did you want to say anything about the Human Racial Justice Library? I know that there was a ceremony.
On Saturday, yeah.
Yes.
So Human is an organization that started after a consortium on the college of Antioch campus in 1978. Out of that grew a social justice organization called Human Things for Public Circulation. Let's see. Some of the initial founders of that organization were William Patel and Dr. Jim Duff. So fast forward to now, Human is also one of the many 501c3s we have in town. Last Saturday, with the help of Shadia Alvarez from the Credit Scott Team Center, the director, we were able to dedicate a library that's part of the Olive Kettering Library. And it's not about an old library, it's about shelves, 2 public shelves worth of books that some heavy hitters do. So we were really happy to be able to do that and kind of, really hold an event at the Credit Scott Team Center. It's a beautiful space and it's available, for the community.
Yeah, very amazing. And thanks for the work at Human. I know there's a lot of people involved in that. It's really exciting. All right. I'm going to run through a few announcements, and then Josue, I don't know if you have anything.
I do, I have to.
Okay, first of all, I wanted to say neighborhood block parties have been in full swing. Thank you to the village for facilitating. I'm glad council, under the auspices of the Human Relations Commission, can still support the activity in a little bit of a way. So, Nate. Porch Fest, thanks again to the village and our ability to support some porta-johns. Sadly, I had to work in Chicago that day, but I saw a lot of videos. It looked like a lot of fun, and Porch Fest is such an amazing activity in our community. I did want to give a shout out to the 9/11 Stair Climb, and this was the 9th year that this has been done in the Dayton area. Some of you may remember it used to be at Antioch College. The main building hasn't been able to support it in recent years. I've had the privilege to do it 9 years, and we'll see how long I can still tackle stairs, at least on the upside. But yeah, it was really a great event, and I would encourage Yellow Springers to attend that next year. I did want to mention to council that Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission is talking about increasing dues And I just wanted to let folks know that the way it would impact us right now, our dues are $1,762. There are two ranges. At the maximum, it could go up to $1,959.44. So a little bit less than $200. Part of the motivation is, you know, things have gotten more expensive, but beyond that, there's a real goal towards thinking more about covering matching and some of the things that municipalities often can't afford. A big discussion, in fact, I thought it was kind of a prolonged discussion from one of our county commissioners who kept on talking about ROI, return on investment, which is a fine thing to think about. I would say our return on investment, when we talk about the several million that we got this past couple of years, is super high. So it's a great value for our community, and the savviness of our team to go after that money is really important. For anyone that's been following the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there is now an additional 70% that the regional or the municipal planning organizations have for trails and walking and biking. There's more money for fixing roads and all the other things. So this is a great benefit, but I will be sharing more. If anyone is concerned about that increase in dues, certainly let me know, because there is going to be a vote on that at the October 6th meeting. But there'll be some information in the packet for all of us. Joint elected bodies meeting. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware, and it'll be in the paper, that a week from Thursday, September 29th, the township trustees and the school board members and the village council members will all be meeting together at the new firehouse. It will be videoed. It is not, they do not have the capability to do a hybrid meeting, so there's not a Zoom in option. But this is something that is going to be really important moving forward, and potentially we'll have other meetings where your elected bodies will be coordinating in a better way around levies, around some of our challenges, you know, involving just kind of, you know, for the village, keeping the lights on, for the township, making sure that we have fire and rescue services and so forth. So I'm really excited about this conversation, and I've already got an indication that this is something that hopefully will continue. I've mentioned it in council meetings before. One of the most compelling letters was from Summer McGuire several years ago when she said, "Why aren't you guys talking to each other?" And we all want to, and we're all intentional about doing that. I wanted to thank Mitzie Miller, who I see in the audience, and the other volunteers for their Sunday sidewalk and yard cleanup, and just in general moving forward with those initiatives. We're going to continue to think about ways that the village can support safer sidewalks and better walking and so forth, but also it takes a village, and so we really need everyone to come together, and that kind of connects to a conversation that Carmen will be leading tonight about actively I guess, supporting volunteers for the village. I wanted to thank the Tecumseh Land Trust and the Chamber for the sunflowers. I got to enjoy them for the first time yesterday. It's beautiful. I think the signage is working really well. It seems a lot safer. There's plenty of parking, and people are enjoying that. Next Monday, we have our 2023 goals session that's going to set the stage for our budget. That will be a hybrid meeting, so people can participate on Zoom. And this is going to be really important because things are getting tighter, so we've got to really prioritize what is most important for our community members. And last thing, so I had a brief conversation with Mec Logan about COVID protocols, and while I have indicated, and maybe others have as well, that I don't see us going back to mask mandates and some of the other things that we did at the height of COVID, two things that came up that I think make a lot of sense. One is to help elevate better information through our social media. So I want to talk, Josue, to you and Philip about how we can do that. For example, I was introduced to the concept of a HEPA filter, I think it's called, HEPA, that we could have in this room. Met came in with his CO2 monitor, and this room is at, what was it, 694, which is relatively good. Ironically, the regular atmosphere is at 420, and used to be at 370, but climate change has changed that a little bit. But I guess there's sort of some ideas around the more CO2 emissions, and in some businesses, those can be really high. If they don't have good filtration, the more risk we can see. So related to that, I wonder if there are opportunities for us to help other businesses getting those filters, maybe like a large buy or whatever. The second thing I think we can do is support signage for businesses that want updated signage. And so more to come, but I asked Mech to kind of help give us those talking points and kind of go from there. So that's what I've got to talk about. I know those were a lot of announcements, but a lot's been going on. Josue?
I don't have a list as long as yours, Brian, but Cemetery Street Lot is complete. So we're excited to deliver that ahead of the street fair, the upcoming street fair, so folks can start using that park. Actually, folks have started to use that parking area off Cemetery, so that's done. Sidewalks today, the team was putting the asphalt down to smooth and blend in the curve, so that's going to be delivered this week. So we're really excited. We're asking folks for continued patience as we get all the material to dry up and get cleaned out this week, and then folks can run on them, walk on them, whatever we want to do. So those are my 2 updates for this week.
All right, thanks. Any other announcements from council? Okay, let's go into the consent agenda. We got the minutes from the last meeting, and I will entertain a motion to confirm those minutes, approve those minutes.
Second.
I move.
Okay, great. And all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. I was just ready.
Any opposed? Okay. And I should say, by the way, Mary Ann McQueen is joining us tonight via Zoom, and glad that she could be here. One of the protocols we passed during the pandemic was to allow for remote participation. Review of the agenda. Anything we need to add, change, delete? Gavin? That microphone.
Yeah. The only thing, I was wondering if we could add some time to the public hearings section. I know in the initial draft, there was 45 minutes of time, and now it looks like there's 15 minutes. So it feels to me like it'd be great to have a little bit more time. I'll say specifically to talk about the YOO program, but one way or the other, just acknowledging, I think it'll take more than a few minutes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for acknowledging that. Anything else? Okay, great. Then petitions and communications, Kevin Stokes.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So yes, the clerk has received a letter from Mitzie Miller regarding council goals, another letter from Mitzie Miller regarding she making comments on the zoning proposal, Greene County Public Health advising that monkeypox vaccines are available. The Kelley Gulden household submitted a letter regarding amplification concerns, downtown noise concerns. The Universal Basic Income Group, Lynn Kramer and the folks he's working with sent us a thank you for our support. Greene County Health also advises that a new COVID booster is available and available generally and specifically at their site. I think they have the Pfizer, but not the Moderna, because it just hasn't shown up yet. Village Manager Josue Salmeron has a letter opposing the Financial Data Transparency Act in the NDAA, and the mayor's clerk has submitted their usual 2 reports. And that's all I have for petitions and communications.
All right. And yeah, go ahead. We do have that on the agenda, right?
The vote on the letter?
Yep. I thought we added it to the agenda.
I think we said we could have a vote on during the petitions and communications, if
Okay.
council is amenable to sending the letter as proposed in the packet.
Yeah. Any comments about that? Gavin, you're good. Carmen?
I'm supportive.
Okay. Yeah, and I should say with that letter, Marion, you can give a thumbs up if you're good with it as well. My understanding is it's directed by AMP, American Municipal Power.
Yes.
And so, for anybody that looks, for some kind of conspiracy, even though the word transparency is in there, if you look at the details, it's actually could potentially lessen transparency, not to mention the burdens on local governments. So, okay, good. Seems like we're all in support. Okay, and I just wanted to mention September. My understanding is this Thursday is when those new boosters are available through Greene County Public Health and beyond. And something else I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, that UBI thing, very significant. We got $25,000 from the county to support the planning for a universal basic income. That is an incredible nod. I am, thoroughly. I don't think anyone expected it, so that is great news. And this could be a really cool thing for our community. Okay, let's move into legislation. And we've got the second reading of 2022-31. Judy, we can do that by title only.
All right, this is establishing a public utility for stormwater by enacting new chapter 1049 of the Village of Yellow Springs Codified Ordinances.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, so this is the second reading, so we're gonna open the public hearing, and we had a lot of discussion and information about stormwater and why, this sort of minimal amount could make a huge difference. So I don't think we're gonna rehash all that, but Josue, if you wanna make a few comments, and then if we have any questions, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, there were a few questions at the last hearing regarding how many stormwater utilities there are in the state, what are their average rates or what their overall rates. So I've included that in the memo, what's the lowest, what's the highest. I've also uploaded a report. I was very tempted to add it to the packet, but it would double the packet inside, and I thought it might be too burdensome to get through all those pages. Anyway, so that information's in my manager report. I've uploaded the report. It's also available to the public, so anyone who has access to our council packet can click on that link and go see a very comprehensive study of the over 2,000 stormwater utilities in the country. It also highlights the 138 stormwater utilities that exist in Ohio. There was one question we couldn't finalize, which came from the Yellow Springs News, which were what would be the specific process to which a property owner could appeal a charge. We will work through that policy, bring that back to council, and what would be the metrics we were looking for. Whatever policy we comes up with has to be in alignment with our existing stormwater regulations and other best practices.
And then would those go through the utility review board?
So there's two levels of appeal. One can dispute with the coordinator, and if they disagree with that, they can be taken to a higher level with the dispute board.
Utility dispute board, thank you. Okay, questions from council members?
I don't have any questions, but I would say that the information in the packet was helpful in, if I had a question about, is this the right amount to start with, I think the information that you provided in the packet helped answer that question. In comparison to other communities near our size, smaller, yes, there are some smaller, and then other larger ones, I think the information suggested we could probably even go a little higher, but I think where we're looking to start, I think is a good place.
Okay. Anything else? Marianne? Okay. Okay, any questions or comments from citizens? Yes, Pat?
Hi, my name is Patricia Brown, and I live in Thistle Creek. And I know that we all, we need the stormwater system upgraded, and I know the county's been, the village has been doing that in the last few years, and we definitely need to do it. And I know also that all of us who live in the village use stormwater in one way or another. We all drive on the streets, we walk the sidewalks. Those are impermeable systems, and they cause stormwater, to get into the storm grates that you have that could be causing overflows that go to the treatment. But there's also, and I think many communities, well, I should say, I read a lot about how long stormwater has been an issue here and how recently we have begun to address that in more significant ways, especially like in building new, requiring detention ponds. At least that much is being done. I think a whole lot more should be done. I also want to say that there are many places in Yellow Springs that do not contribute to stormwater. And either, and though I think we all need to pay for it, a minimum, I don't know whether that's $3, $5 or whatever, but there are those of us like in Thistle Creek Lane, we have no contribution to the stormwater. We have a detention pond that takes all of our water, including the ones on the streets within us, into the streams. We do not contribute to it, to any of it going to the treatment plant. And there are several other developments that are similar. Like, for instance, the one last year where they did the pocket neighborhood. I think I don't know if they contribute to anything, but they certainly have a way for the water from the roofs and from their parking lot to go into a system that does not, I believe, I don't know, go into the stormwater. There are many developments that were done by Jonathan Brown over the years, I think at least 7 in the village, that have been significantly planned to make sure that all water coming off the roofs and the way in which the buildings were placed, that the stormwater does not go into, the water coming down on the roofs, on the land around it, does not go into the stormwater system of the village. Therefore, I think my recommendation is that we start with whatever you think we all are responsible for, because we all use the sidewalks and the streets. But when we talk about impermeable things like roofs and garage, the cement in front of the garages and the water, you know, there's a big difference wherever you go in Yellow Springs. So I believe that some committees should be chosen, or individuals chosen, to study this and to come up with a plan that charges people who have the impermeable, that are contributing the most to the impermeable, that, you know, contributing most to the stormwater that we have. And I think at the same time, we ought to let people know that there are ways to mitigate their houses so that we are not contributing to it. This is very important for climate change as well as other things. Okay, and I just want to say the village has wonderful plans on their site on how to mitigate water coming off roofs and so on. I think that we should encourage people who can afford it to do that.
All right, thanks, Patricia. And I will just emphasize at our last meeting, it's actually in the minutes, Josue highlighted, and I think we're all in agreement that ultimately we want to get to where people are paying for what they're responsible for. And so that is in the plans. I also think with our wildlife habitat, many of the other things, the Environmental Commission should, you know, will continue to educate folks. And by the way, happy belated birthday. Oh, it's today? Okay, yeah, I knew it was coming up. All right, happy birthday. Yes, officially. All right. We'll sing at the break. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, then I think we're ready to take a vote. Judy, if you could call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry, I will close the public hearing. Thank you, and then we'll take a vote.
Fantastic. Stokes. Brown.
Yes.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, what better way to celebrate your birthday than a council meeting? Okay, next up we have the emergency reading of ordinance 2022-33, and we can do that by title only.
All right, this is approving the form and authorizing execution of the 2022 Locust Ridge Energy Schedule with American Municipal Power, Inc., and taking other actions in connection therewith and declaring an emergency.
Any motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. Okay, Josue.
Thank you, Brian. Council, this is a time-sensitive matter, which is why you're getting it as an emergency ordinance. We received, just last week, we received the forward market prices for energy that we're expected to buy on the market for over the next 5 years. It's on a sheet. In the evaluating the cost of energy on the market, it's going to be higher than expected through 2025. We have an opportunity that's time sensitive of locking in renewable energy in our portfolio for the next 3 years to offset that cost increase that's on the market. Traditionally, we've benefited from buying energy off the market because we've had unprecedented cheap energy in this country due to a massive expansion of gas drilling and reserves. We're no longer seeing those cheap energy prices due to gas. We're seeing high rates. I've included a table in the memo. I've also included in the memo an analysis of what those prices are projected to be and what savings could be generated by locking in a 3-year contract with Locust Ridge Wind for the next 3 years. We're looking at a projected savings of $159,388. I think it's important that we accept this contract, engage in this contract, so that we can avoid cost increases in our supply, which ultimately, as our supply costs go up, we have to pass that on to our customers or residents.
And I did notice in the special report we're going to see later that our energy prices are pretty competitive with who we were compared to. Yeah, there's lots of information in the packet on this. I'm going to open the public hearing because this is an emergency reading. And council, questions or comments?
Well, I was proud that I understood all the math. But whereas I read $49.59 as one rate, the one calculation, well, yeah, when you,
I can explain that.
right, thank you.
So on Friday, as we're submitting this packet, the team is working to fast track this deal. Okay. So on Friday, we received a letter from the person that's negotiating the contract with Locust Ridge. The 47 megawatt hour, which is 47 cents a kilowatt hour, that price would be if we are granted the tax exemption, which we are likely to be granted the tax exemption on gross receipts for this project. The AMP team has submitted their tax exemption application, but until that tax exemption is granted, we're looking at 49 cents a kilowatt hour, 49.50. So that memo came to us on Friday. It's a Friday, Johnny, or I think it was Thursday or Friday. It was literally as we were putting the packet together. So that's where the price discrepancy is. Once we're granted the tax exemption on the project, we will get the 47 cents a kilowatt hour.
So the savings could be more.
Right, so you're approving a contract at 49, not to exceed 49.50 cents a kilowatt hour. If we get the tax exemption, that price would be reduced to 47.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Marianne, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
For Josue. So I think, if I understood correctly, that with this contract, it would raise our portfolio to 96% renewable. Is that correct?
That is correct. So currently we're buying 16% in the remainder of 2022 and for the 23 and 24 and 25, we're projected to buy 16% of our energy from the open market. By engaging Locust Wind, we will be buying an additional I'm trying to work the math in my head. It'll get us to 96%. We will be left with only having to buy 4% of our energy on the market. So in short, 96% of our energy needs will be met through contract obligations.
Well, I think it's very cool. And then I have a question. Is the fluctuation that we experience, let's say, is the fluctuation such that we would ever be in danger of having contracts that had too much energy and we wouldn't be actually using all of our contracted energy? Is that a potential?
That's yes, that is a potential, and that there's several variables. How much energy you were using day to day, over the month, versus what our contract or projects are generating. The AMP team, there's a trading desk through the association that any excess energy that is generated through a project gets sold on the market, and the accountants and the sales teams, they figured out how to credit all the individual municipalities for any proceeds that are made from selling excess energy from our projects. If you see this project, looking at the price value, because we're getting it under 49 cents and looking at what the market rates will be over the next 3 years, I don't anticipate that we will have excess energy, but in the event that we do, we could sell any excess wind energy on the market and make some money off of it. But that's just a scenario that could happen. We'll have to see how our demand changes over time. We've got a couple projects in the works that could increase, or well, they're going to increase our load. We have the Cresco expansion, we have the Kinney property, that's the subdivision. We don't have that project hasn't made it through the entire process, but it is possible that it could come on in the next 3 years, and that's going to affect our load. Mm-hmm. So there are market conditions that we have some projections on, and they're likely to change, but it all depends on, we're making calculations right now on what we know certain. We know what our load is now and what we're buying and what we're using and what's available in the market.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from citizens or council? Okay, well, I shouldn't say this, but it seems like a no-brainer to me. I think it's a great benefit, and 96% renewable energy. Yes. That's incredible. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and Judy, if you could call the roll.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes, indeed.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Last piece of legislation is Resolution 2022-58, and we can also do that by title only.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement with Greene County Educational Services Center, ESC, for creation of a resource youth outreach officer program.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Anyone want to hazard a second? Okay.
I second it.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have a lot more detail in the packet this time around, and we appreciate that. I think that a lot of that information is very helpful. Josue, maybe if you want to give us the high points, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, I'll touch on the highlights. That this is, there's a letter from the superintendent, Terry, at the ESC, that highlights the need that she has, and this is something that she's been working on for some time. It also highlights the unique relationship that our police department has with the ESC, and how it's been a productive relationship, fruitful relationship in improving outcomes for the center. Chief has also included a memo in her packet and is available to touch on or answer any questions council may have. Florence is also in the audience and is able to talk about the project through the community outreach perspective. I think that giving the organizations need our capability and how uniquely positioned we are as a police department to be community-based, solution-focused, I think it's a good match. It's a good relationship to deliver better outcomes for this institution. I'm happy to answer any questions. Paige is here too.
Yeah, Chief Burge, since you weren't here at our last meeting, be great to hear a few words from you.
Sure, absolutely. So I think I hit the highlights in the memo that I sent you guys. This program can be summarized in two things. It's relationship building and it's safety, right? We've seen a lot of incidents over the years. I believe I highlighted roughly 121, 131, forgive me, I don't remember off the top of my head, just this year alone, in acts of violence involving gun violence in our schools nationwide this year. So safety is our biggest focus here, with relationship building being the second biggest focus. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, this was at the request of the ESC, and just trying my best to support our local schools here. So.
Right, thank you. Okay, questions or comments from council? Gavin?
Well, so I think you weren't here at the last meeting. I assume that you heard. I had some questions. I shared some questions with Josue. I assume that they were passed to you, or you have an idea of the kinds of things. Many to most of the things are addressed in the memo, which just on this memo and then on the previous issue, getting these kind of things is so helpful to be able to have context to what's going on and to be able to communicate about these things. So thank you for that, and I hope that we continue and have more communication about these things. So I think I might have said this at the last meeting, but I guess I'll just preface my comments and say that, like, this is not personal toward you or toward any of the officers or towards the ESC. I said this in the email to Josue. I guess I'll just say, sort of for the record, that I think about this stuff around policing, around criminal justice, around some of these issues as being kind of like the issues related to climate change, where it's not like it's great that we're getting to 96% renewables. And I don't think anybody thinks that us doing that in Yellow Springs fixes the climate change problem, nor is it if we do some minor changes in our policing efforts here, is it going to make the difference in ending mass incarceration, which is like a serious problem that we have collectively. I do feel like we got to look at this stuff closely to try to do our part. So anyway, that's just the mindset that I look at it within. So for example, you talk about the importance of safety, a two-piece relationship and safety. So I don't know if you're aware, there's been some discussion around the SROs in Cincinnati here most recently about whether or not that contract should continue. As part of that research, it was shared that the Journal of Adolescent Health, there was a Journal of Adolescent Health study that says there's no data to suggest that having school resource officers in buildings makes it more safe for shooting incidents. I guess part of what I'm trying to get at here is that I don't like having more guns to stop guns as a general rule. I understand that it makes sense to people on some level that if there was a person with a gun in a building, that it might help stop another person who came in with a gun with a building. I think most of us are very aware what happened in Uvalde, where frankly, it just did not happen. And based on the data, I think that's actually more the norm than it is the exception. So I'm trying to understand, by having more weapons, by having more, I do consider this part of sort of militarization. How is that making it more safe? That's what makes me nervous. So that's one question. I have lots of things I could talk about around this. That's why I said I want to have a few more minutes. I would love to have been able to talk about it more outside of this context, and would be happy to talk more about it outside of this context too. So hopefully this is taken with respect. I've enjoyed working with you. I look forward to more.
Well, that's not necessary. Yeah, I completely understand now, and concerns are to be expected. And I understand that we work in a greater criminal justice system, and I acknowledge and I respect that. So I'll speak to the first point you made. How can more guns? And the bottom line is they can't, right? I mean, that's not going to solve the problem. And I'm not looking to solve a greater systemic issue here. What I'm looking to do is focus on what I can control, and what I control is here in Yellow Springs. I control public safety here in Yellow Springs. So one comment I want to make is, you mentioned that there's no data, to prove that these are effective things. Well, one of the greatest issues with law enforcement and measuring our success in general is that you can't measure what doesn't happen. And the greatest measurement of our success is the lack of crime, right? So how many SROs, how many people are in position, how many officers have been on the right corner in the right place at the right time that you'll never know about, but they were there and they prevented something from happening, and you can't measure that. That's not a data point you'll ever be able to find. And I'll follow that up by saying, even though I can't fix this greater issue, at the end of the day, if we have a critical incident here in the village, whether it happens to you personally or whether it happens at one of our businesses or our churches or our schools, who are you going to call? You're going to call the police, and we're going to show up and we're going to do what we're supposed to do, because that's what we're sworn to do, is to protect you. And we will show up and we will respond with gear, guns, etc. And I can't change that fact. That's just the fact. And that's how we try to. The guns don't mitigate, but when we arrive on scene, that's what we have to do. I hate that harsh reality, but go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
So on some, I think I understand what you're saying, and I guess I feel like we can change that. That's the way we do it. So, and in some ways we kind of are. Like, we hired a person who is a social worker in our police department that doesn't have a gun.
Sure.
That is taking and I look at the incident reports that come in the manager's report. The vast majority of the activity does not require a gun, does not require a bulletproof vest, does not require specialized equipment. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be prepared in certain circumstances, but I guess I do feel like this thing of like it being inevitability that this is what has to happen. I just don't think I agree. I think that we can change the balance and still meet public safety needs without having all of the equipment and cost, and frankly, the risk that's associated with more weaponization, for example.
Carmen?
Yeah, I want to thank you for your letter, and I wasn't able to respond to your email earlier. I was too busy. One of the things that's a little bit, I'm not going to say a little bit, that's disconcerting for me is that the trajectory. So this is ESE, right? Not necessarily in Yellow Spring schools. What happens if a group of parents decide that we need a youth resource officer armed at Mills Lawn? Because some of the kids that are at ESE are almost elementary aged kids, sure, right? Or we need one at the high school or in the middle school. So that concerns me. The other piece of this is that, there's all this language around trauma-informed care, trauma-informed care. A person who is trained or who's well-versed in trauma-informed care, a police officer who would be well-versed in trauma-informed care or dealing with adolescents who have experienced hardships and trauma at the hands of the police, because this is the world that we live in, who've had adverse interactions with the police, either by the police taking them from their house or the police taking a family member away from them, being put in the system. It seems like a police officer who was well-versed in trauma-informed care would understand that having a uniformed officer with a service arm would induce trauma. It would be triggering for some children, especially for children who haven't had the opportunity or the resources made available to them to work through that trauma. That's the second thing I was thinking about. And the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that not everyone has the same relationship with the Yellow Springs Police Department as other people. And that concerns me. And then, no matter how I feel about the Yellow Springs Police, what makes one of our officers inherently better than an officer from Xenia or Fairborn who has some human development background, some psychology background, not just a training, but some coursework, that there's some documentation behind. You know, maybe someone volunteered with Boys and Girls Club for 15 years and then became an officer, right? So these are the questions that I have. And as someone who's worked for the most of their adult life with people, period, but with children ages, 2 to 18 in Yellow Springs and in Springfield, I've seen firsthand the reaction that some of these kids have to an officer approaching. Whether or not that officer is there for them or not. And the firing off of thoughts that happens because they've had an adverse interaction with a police officer. And so these are kids who already have that. And I understand that we're trying to change the narrative, but we need to consider these children. And so there are many, many thoughts like Gavin, and I could go on, but these are things that I think it's really, really critically important for us to consider.
Okay. No, it's all valid. I appreciate all the feedback. I mean, and it's something that I have tried to consider. I think there was one specific question in there for me, and it was about what makes a Yellow Springs officer inherently better. And the answer is they aren't, because we all are a part of a greater criminal justice system, as I mentioned before, and all we can control is our own little jurisdiction. But I take pride in that little jurisdiction and what we can control. And I take pride in the fact that I have officers that I hold accountable for operating within our guidelines on village policing. I take pride in the fact that I have officers that I make sure are engaging, that are building these relationships, that are doing the community-based things that make this place everything we want it to be. And is it a work in progress? It will always be a work in progress because we always need to get better. But that's what I have control of, and that's what I'll speak to. So when you say what makes an officer from Yellow Springs inherently better, they're not. But we have the ability to know many of the kids that we're interacting with, and you mentioned the SC is not all Yellow Springs, but there are many Yellow Springs students there. And I think that this program in and of itself is our opportunity to get to know the ones that are not, and to develop the relationships to hopefully have better outcomes in the future. And that's my biggest goal, is to establish these relationships. Rapport is the very foundational thing that can mean better outcomes in the future. So we leverage our relationships with our prosecutors. We leverage our relationship with our community outreach specialist, all the resources that we have that I know I can speak to. I can't speak for that for Greene County. I can't speak for that for any other agency. They're professionals and they do a bang up job, but that's the best way I can answer your question.
And am I correct that part of the contract does specify that coursework needs to be done for whoever that officer is?
That's correct, yeah, Brian. So, and currently what we have is the current youth outreach officer. He has completed and graduated from the 40-hour SRO course.
Is this Officer Kincaid?
It is, yeah, Officer Steve Kincaid. So Steve also has a background in working with youth. He's coached youth volleyball for years. He's spent the last, I believe, 5-6 years at least, coaching kids from very young all the way up to teenage. Prior to coming to law enforcement work, he actually worked in the juvenile detention center. I am shocked at the fact that when I walk about with him in the summertime, it's pretty common for us to run into a youth that he dealt with in the JDC who says, "Hey, Steve-O," and they high five and fist bump. So he's also got current CIT training from the academy, and he's slated to go to an additional 40 hours of CIT training next week, I believe, actually. Florence Randolph is also slated to train Mr. Kincaid, or Officer Kincaid, on some trauma-informed approaches as well. So, and it'll be continued-based education, just like anything is in law enforcement and education. We're constantly learning, we're constantly growing, and we've already had conversations with the ESC about anything specific to their programming or their youth that would be pertinent to his being in that atmosphere. So,
Kevin?
I am pro Yellow Springs Police. I mean, I love everything about this village. I'm glad we have the police force that we do. I'm glad that we're focusing on community policing. that phrase gets tossed around a lot, but I would submit you probably ask 5 people in this room and come up with 5 definitions of what community-based policing is. But whatever it is, I think we would all be in agreement that this village and this police department has been trying to do that over the last several years. From a practical standpoint, inherently better? No, I don't think they are, but I think functionally better. I think our police are. And so what we're addressing here is a need that the Greene County ESC has. And we have an opportunity to fill that need. And if we don't do it, there will be another municipality police force doing the work. So I would submit, that the best care that we can give to those students is to have some control over who is dealing with them. And it sounds like Officer Kincaid is the right person. He's part of the right team. And I just want to, again, emphasize that two parts of a point I just made. If we choose not to do this, someone else will, and we won't have the control. And it'll be Greene County sheriffs, probably. And when they are not able to respond, we're going to respond to the calls anyway. I think there's a great deal of advantage, as we touched on in the last meeting, about the reimbursement for time that's already being spent. I think it's a positive. I'm not going to get into the operational side of where the money those reimbursement dollars might be spent. I'm sure it'll be well spent because I trust the team. So when you consider in the grand scheme of things that this is not our thing, it's not the sheriff's thing, this is a Greene County thing. And I don't know if they considered Greene County sheriffs first and then came to us, but I would submit that they did some deliberation and decided that this police department would best fit their needs. And again, to say, I don't know how many times I need to say it, if we don't take advantage of the opportunity that we're given to have the positive influence, every kid should be high-fiving police officers, Pedro, I know Steve-O, Pedro doesn't work, but I think this is a good thing. I am not discounting the feelings and thoughts and experiences that others have had, but I think we need to be careful not to allow those experiences in the world to taint what we're capable of doing here in the village. So I am 100% in support of this proposal. And I would like to encourage my colleagues to support as well.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that.
Marianne?
I'm very conflicted about this and conflicted for all of the things that Gavin and Carmen said. If I had my way, our police officers would not carry guns. I'm not saying that they couldn't have guns available, but they would not carry guns. If I had my way, and this police officer in this school would not be carrying a gun. But I don't have my way on this particular issue. So I had a good conversation with Chief Burge this afternoon. Appreciated that conversation. I learned some things that I hadn't understood. So one of my concerns has been, I do not want to increase our police force. I am looking for ways to decrease it, and or at least not increase it. So one thing that I found was that this position will not increase the number of number or hours of officers working for us. As Kevin mentioned, if we do not do this, they will turn to presumably Greene County Sheriff. So I can, and also I do not see this as having a presence to make sure that if an active shooter comes into the school, that there's someone there with a gun. That is not my understanding of why this is being put in place. And it concerned me that the chief mentioned the school shootings of shooters coming into buildings, because that was not my impression. That is not my impression of the purpose of this officer. So I don't have any other questions, but as I said, I have very mixed feelings about this.
Okay, thanks, Mary Ann. So I think it's been a great discussion, very thoughtful. I would say to some extent conflicted, but I will say that what compels me first and foremost, as been mentioned, is if it's not the Yellow Springs Police Department, then it's someone else. And I do think we're a million times better. And what also compels me is I trust that Terry Streeter knows her students and has worked with us. The letter was very compelling and thoughtful. I trust our community outreach specialist, who spoke very eloquently at the last meeting, and rereading those minutes is very, really kind of affects me. And then I trust our chief and the work that we're doing. And, but again, I come back to, I don't want it to be someone else. And so that's why I support this initiative. I will say we've had a lot of discussion about this issue. So if there are some specific comments or questions from citizens, we'll take those, but also keep in mind we do have a long meeting tonight. Jessica.
Jessica Thomas, Yellow Springs News. This question is for Paige. How many calls go out to the ESC per week, and how many of those are for things that require any escalation on behalf of a police officer? So how many of those calls are for potential assaults, fights, etc., things that would require a youth officer to carry a weapon or to have any equipment other than themselves and what they need to teach a course in peace or whatever that part of the job is?
Yes, Jessica, thank you for your question. So I'm going to give you rough numbers because you'll have to forgive me. I put together a bunch of numbers, and then as soon as I walked up here, I left them downstairs where they're most beneficial. But for the last calendar year that I pulled, which is going to be the 2021-2022 calendar year, we had 107 calls for service at that location. Now, I did include in those calls for service some routine services such as school detail, such as follow-ups for calls for service, things of that nature, because in this position, the YOO, we would still be engaging in those types of activities. Of the 107, we had roughly 23 that rose to the level of a crime. Of those 23, we found that a crime was actually committed and charges could have been filed in 5 of those instances. Out of all of those instances, we were able to refer to other resources such as counselors, parents, or outside, counselors or parents. And in the remaining 3, which were violent crimes where someone was physically assaulted, there were charges.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Would you get back to your office? Could you just send me those?
I will.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Matt?
I would like to speak against this. I'm Matt Raska. Hi, I live in town. I would like to speak against this particular ordinance. Just because someone is going to have to do it doesn't mean we're going to have to do it. Like, the Greene County might have their drug task force, but that doesn't mean we have to be a part of it. Thank you.
And I do want to say we are not part of the drug task force. We left that 6 years ago, so, which I was proud of. Okay, anything else? All right, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
DeVore Leonard.
So can I ask a question before we vote? Is that okay?
Sure.
So I don't want to like stall or delay this or something if there's not going to be a difference in the way it's approached, but I do feel like I'm learning new things. I wonder, is it worth discussing it more? We have not had a chance to talk directly. If this is, I guess I'll just say, like, if I can say this before the actual vote, if I got to vote right now, I'm voting no. If you'd like to take some more time to talk about it, I'm not totally opposed to talking about it. I don't know where other people are, but that's where I'm at.
Can we postpone this decision any longer?
And that's not a commitment, just to be clear. It's not a commitment. I'm going to vote for it.
But
I have a series of other questions that haven't been addressed yet. If you'd like to take time to talk about them, I'm game to do that.
Okay. So if we do not make a decision tonight, what?
I'm getting crinkle face from Paige.
What does that mean?
What I'll say is I don't want to delay the ESC any further. I think they've been pretty patient. It was initially the kind of switchover for solicitors that delayed us in the first place. And I won't speak for her. She may take another year before she fills this role and reapproaches the Greene County Sheriff's Office. But for all respect to her, I don't want to delay her any further. So that's my opinion. I'll see if the host way if he wants to. But I'd be happy to reapproach her and see, but I do want to pay her that respect, so.
Sure. I think that if there's a way for us to come to either answer your questions or if there are changes that we can agree to, I think one of the things internally we've discussed is that our responding officer who's assigned, or the person that's assigned at the site, isn't going to wear the full uniform as they would when they are on the regular calls. So that is something that we have already contemplated in this approach. In some cases, it may not be practical. Let's say they're responding to a call for service, whether the feasibility of switching out uniforms to go into the school it may not be practical. So there are things that around. I heard the concern about the uniforms. The person who's going to have Steve, who's going to have regular schedule there, is going to adapt his uniform to dress down from the traditional police uniform that he wears to be more approachable and be less threatening. One of the biggest appeal for me is that our officer is going to have the training beyond what may be required of the position, but also there be continuous improvement of the approach. So if there are things that they need to adjust, or as time goes, as he gets to know the students better, and they're working with the team, the care team at the school, they're able to be part of the care continuum that's specifically designed for a particular child. So if we have a child that responds to a heightened anger and they're showing certain types of symptoms, not everyone's going to have the same approach to their anger. Some might scream, others may need to take a walk, others may want to throw things. I think as our officer gets to know the students better, they're going to have a greater toolbox to respond to particular kids and particular needs. So I think that is something that we have control over. Paige touched on it correctly. There are things that are out of our control, but things that are within our control, we're going to try to shape them to have the best outcomes possible. That there are some of those things may never answer your concerns. The fact that they're going to carry a gun, that they represent an institution. There are going to be students that are just going to have a certain response to law enforcement because some of those things are generational. The burden is generational. And there are just some of those things we're not going to be able to resolve, but wherever we can, I'm committed, Paige committed, and Paige has gotten commitment from the schools that we will work on the services as a team. It's not how the school wants to, it's not how the office wants to. It's going to be collaborative so that we're ensuring the best outcome possible. And I don't know if through talking tonight, we can get to a resolution on these matters. If we can, I'm open to it. Delaying it further, I'm concerned that that Terry may have options, or she may not. It may be that other law enforcement agencies cannot provide something to her.
But it was indicated in the packet that the goal was to fill this position at the beginning of the school year. Correct. So we're, 4 or 5 weeks in. Okay, so Gavin, do you want to make a motion to table this, or
ask the questions if they're not too, if you got specific questions?
Yeah, I think the short version is no, I don't want to make a motion to table it, and I don't want to spend all the time to go through the questions. I'd love for us to talk through it more in the future so that we're not feeling like we have to make a decision right up here where there's been discussion beforehand. Yeah.
Okay. So Judy, I think we're back to calling the roll.
All right. DeVore Leonard.
No.
Stokes.
Yes.
Brown.
No.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks for everybody's thoughtfulness. I think we will continue to discuss it. Okay, we're now at citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we entertain no more than 3 minutes to comment on anything that's not on the agenda. Do we have any citizen concerns? All right. Come on up here, Mr. Chamber President. Mark
I've got
Heiss.
a couple hats tonight, but I'll keep it to 3 minutes for all of them. First of all, thank you very much for your kind words, Brian, about the sunflower field. We were proud to be able, as the chamber, to partner with Tecumseh Land Trust to make that happen. We were happy to bring it back, and the generations of families that came through and talked to us and told us about how disappointed they were not having it over the past 2 years, because they have family photos every year at our sunflower field. It was absolutely amazing. Going forward, I'm not going to talk about street fair. That's a freight train that's going down the tracks, and it's going to happen. And thank you very much, Josue and Johnny, for getting that parking lot ready. And I've seen it. It's amazing. Thank you very much, gentlemen and council, for making that happen. What I do want to talk about is the future. The 29th of October, we're bringing Zombie Walk back. You'll be receiving a request for a closure of Short Street on that evening from 5 o'clock until 10 p.m. so that the community can come as our young adults and our older adults possibly slog through and celebrate the Halloween season and get to dress up and have a little music and a little fun. The day after that, there's a film coming to the Little Art, and it's called Meandering Through. I just got back yesterday from the annual meeting of the Buckeye Trail Association. This is a film about a gentleman named Everett Brand who did he attempted to pass the record of through hiking the Buckeye Trail, which is a 1,400-mile-plus trail, and I think you've heard me before say it's the world's longest loop trail. And it comes right here through Yellow Springs. And he had quite an experience here in Yellow Springs, which is going to lead me and Josue to approaching you at some point in the near future for a memorandum of understanding for a piece of property in the village. And if you go see the film, you'll understand why. And the last thing that I wanted to let you know is that there's a gentleman named Acuna Hikes. At least that's what his trail name is. You can find him on Instagram at under Acuna Hikes, AKUNAHIKES. This is the first Black man to have done the Triple Crown, which means he has hiked the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. His next conquest is the Buckeye Trail. He's starting this week. I've reached out to him to extend the hospitality of our village, and I'd like, if I do get a hold of him and he's able to take a little bit of time, I'd like to invite him to meet with some of you.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. Mitzie Miller, did I see you heading up here?
I just wanted to say how nice it was for Porch Fest and Street Fair coming up to see a lot of our sidewalks and the improvements that have been made. There's a lot of people I want to thank, council, for your support. Our village manager and several groups have been involved. supporting this issue, and the senior center, our Yellow Springs Citizen Action Project Group, our zoning department has been really starting to enforce, and letters have gone out that have made a huge difference. So I just want to encourage the village to keep up the hard work. We worked this weekend and actually did 2 properties. I can't tell you how many people walking have made comments and are so excited about being able to walk more safely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitzie. Yes.
Apologize, I came to the meeting late. I don't know if I missed the item or if it was taken off the agenda about the noise ordinance.
We are talking about that under old business.
Okay.
So it'd be great if you wait. I do apologize. Yeah, we always have a hefty agenda here. Jonathan?
The Citizen Review Board, it's not on the agenda, is it?
It's not.
Okay. No, I just wanted to comment on, I've talked to 3 officers so far about the proposal that's going to be passed eventually. 3 of them, or 2 of them, really didn't know much about citizen review boards, period. And I know you told me that they had been briefed on it. That was a while back. So, but these were new officers. So I went into discussion with them, and I just don't want there to be any pre-made or fabricated animus between the review board and the police officers, because they should be working together. The one officer who I did talk in depth with for 30, 40 minutes about the specific proposal, not citizen review boards, but about the specific proposal. I'll give you her quote. I'll give you the quote after we discussed it. And she understood it. She said, well, that's how it should be. That was the quote. That's how it should be. So I just don't want there to be any animus, because this is a people's demand. It's always been a demand. Human rights will always be a demand until everybody's equal at the table of humanity. So this demand that our youth started and that this committee has pulled through, I think it should be respected by the officers. I don't know if Paige wants to comment on what the officers know about this specific proposal. And it's also, the other thing is, this is an independent committee. It's not a subcommittee of anybody. It's not a subcommittee of 365. Never has been. Never has been. We linked up with 365 because the issue affects the Black community the most. But once we presented to them and they accepted the proposal, and Human, we presented to Human, AAPI, as an independent committee. And it was an independent committee all the way through, as you well know, Brian, that demand, this is a demand, always has been, always will be, until Black folks are treated equally. So I just wanted to leave it right there for now. I don't know if Paige had anything to say.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. And I certainly want to underscore, if we're not focused on the relationship building, then it's not going to be a successful initiative. So thank you. Any other citizen concerns? John Hempling.
Yeah, I also wanted to say the sidewalks look great. I live on one of the streets. The sidewalk coming in front of my apartment looks great. Fantastic. Very happy. I heard Gavin say last meeting that he wanted council to have a discussion about affordable housing. Support that. I think that's great. I know that council's really struggled with this thing with the ESC, and I feel like it's very difficult for council to basically deal with justice system issues without a committee dedicated to those things, which is why, of course, I've always advocated for council to appoint the Justice System Commission, which once you get a CRB ready, you could have that replace the Justice System Commission, but you should have a committee dedicated to the justice system issues. So if you are going to have a discussion of the justice system, I think that probably talking about setting up a committee to deal with that should really be because justice system issues are so complicated. I think it's very difficult for council to deal with that within council meetings with all of the other things you guys have to handle. I think the stormwater fees are good, support what you just passed, but I do think that funding the stormwater system through income or property taxes would be more progressive. So I just want to flag, like, looking forward, when you are thinking about raising or renewing a property or income tax levy, like thinking about, well, actually, could we make this slightly larger and then repeal the stormwater fees? Make the system simpler and more progressive. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. John Fee, we're probably not going to do a double dip here. Any other citizen concerns? Yes.
Hey, my name is Drake Highlander. I live at 1200 Livermore Street. My wife is Linda Love Highlander. She grew up here. She went to school here. Our daughter, Samantha, is in the school system. This is going to seem like it's coming out of left field because of all the really important things you're talking about, but it is a concern for us on Livermore Street, and apparently it's been a concern for the village for a while. We moved here in 2016, built a house on Livermore Street, and at the time there were some buzzards there, maybe 50. In 2019, I emailed Patty Bates and Denise Swinger at the village saying, hey, this is a problem because the flock just keeps growing. It's this flock that lives in the pine trees at Friends Care Center. Anyone here familiar with those, the buzzards? Well, I don't have any statistics, I don't have any numbers, but my experience is that it's grown from maybe 50 to 60 to now 200. Even this morning, and I have pictures, they were absolutely everywhere. They're all over Sam Eckenroth's house, Lori and Carl's house. Sam's roof has been damaged. Our roof has been damaged, water leaking in. Our cars have been damaged, over $800 in damage. I do an annual Halloween haunted graveyard. I'm not sure if you've ever.
I think we're, yes, it is great.
Well, if you haven't been by, it's 1200 Livermore Street. The zombies love new victims. I mean, visitors. But the buzzards this year, and every year they go after the decorations. And I've used, they eat up the tombstones, the styrofoam. It's been a much bigger problem this year. There are more of them. We've tried decoys, owls, a coyote, a vulture effigy, reflectors, motion activated sprinklers, drones. I've crashed like 4 drones trying to chase them off. A laser will get them to fly away, but then they just come right back. And so I'm here tonight to see if I could start a conversation to see if there's a way to tackle this comprehensively. Because if we chase them, somehow we're to chase them off Livermore Street, they'd go somewhere else and bother somebody else. So I'd volunteer to be on a committee or start some sort of initiative just to gather data, to get some advice to see, because I'm concerned if we don't, the flock's just going to keep growing, and then it may be too big of a problem.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know about this, Drake, and Josue will follow up.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other citizen concerns?
Busking, was busking talking about?
Next meeting.
For citizen concerns.
It'll be on the agenda.
Oh, can I talk about it now then? Quickly?
John Fee, all right, you got 30 seconds. Okay. Time this.
It's just my understanding that the Chamber of Commerce did a survey so that they could start changing the rules. But I understand that the survey didn't cover the other small business people, the actual buskers. The buskers are the small business. And if we're going to start making rules, I think Representative Buskers should be at the table at any meeting.
Okay. Yep. All right.
No, I have to respond. Brian, the Chamber of Commerce did not take any type of survey.
Okay. 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 All right. Thanks, everyone. I think we're going to move into our special reports, and we've got 2 great ones tonight. And so first off, we're going to have, I think Matt and John, are you guys co-presenting?
We're going to figure this out.
Okay. All right. Wow. Zoning reform. Oh, Alex is here too. I was wondering who was behind that mask.
We'll just run. Yeah, she has the slides. She got PDFs. So good with me.
All right.
My name is Matt Raska, and this is John Hempling and Alex Melamed, and we're part of More Neighbors for More Neighbors in Yellow Springs, and we've been working on this proposal for the better part of a year now, and we finally thought that it had matured enough to bring to you guys, and these are a set of changes that we recommend making to the zoning code. A first of 3 proposed set of changes, hopefully. We wanted to do these in bite-sized pieces so that it's not like overwhelming. Mostly focusing on the permitted uses of the land. Council in its 2022 strategic goals identified and committed itself to implementing strategic zoning improvements to achieve an affordable community. In addition, the 2020 Comprehensive Land Use Plan directs Village to review development codes to determine if the goals of promoting infill are impeded by the regulations to actively support middle housing types and to encourage housing diversity. Amending our current zoning regulations will make it easier and less costly to build more different kinds of housing. As such, we recommend making permitted in all residential districts 2-family housing, multifamily housing, accessory dwelling units. This suggestion does not affect the other zoning regulations that apply to ADUs, and it also does not affect the transient guest lodging laws in any way. John, this is your part. You really like this part.
Sure. So the Yellow Springs zoning code has several provisions that constitute exclusionary zoning, including its prohibitions and restrictions on multifamily housing. According to the White House's Council of Economic Advisors, exclusionary zoning laws enact barriers to entry that constrain housing supply, which, all else equal, translates into an equilibrium with more expensive housing and fewer homes being built. The White House has called on the country to eliminate exclusionary zoning, calling out these policies for hurting the economy and contributing to racial discrimination in the housing market. Thank you.
Yeah. So increasing the density of the town will have a number of layered benefits. One, it will make, in addition to making more types of housing available, make more price points of housing potentially available. Furthermore, a higher density will spread out the cost of utilities and maintenance over a larger number of people, resulting in savings in the long term. And lastly, an increased population will benefit the local businesses because pedestrians like to shop local, and ideally will benefit our civil society groups such as the Chamber of Commerce and other groups in need of volunteers. There are several precedents around the country for zoning reform. Portland recently did their great big residential infill project. California recently passed several bills that are apply statewide to allow more development along transport corridors. And Minneapolis's 2040 plan allowed duplexes and triplexes, triplexes on what were once single-family only lots. And in addition to that, eliminated all off-street parking minimums. There are some, since this has been a couple of years, there are some numbers available. In Portland, in the since August to February 2022, 297 units built in the city's low-density zones. Of those, 127 were made possible due to the residential infill project, and Portland is looking into doing even more radical rezoning of their code. Furthermore, Minneapolis has seen the construction of about 104 new duplexes and triplexes in single-zoned areas, or single-family zoned areas since January 2020. And I'd like to note that these sound like big numbers if you're just talking about Yellow Springs. Minneapolis is like 400,000 people. If you scaled this, it'd be like 1 or 2 units. Yeah. Next, please. John. This is your favorite part.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the one with the notes don't show up in the PDF.
Oh, sure. So yeah. So analyses have shown that basically increasing supply can lower demand. We're quoting several different sources there. But I do want to note that we're certainly not arguing that we anticipate that these reforms will radically change the Yellow Springs housing market. Zoning reform is necessary, but not sufficient for addressing the affordable housing crisis in Yellow Springs. These changes are important, and as mere regulatory changes, they don't cost the village any money. From our perspective, the best first step to addressing the affordable housing crisis is to make it clear that the village is friendly to affordable housing by eliminating elements of the zoning code that are hostile to less expensive types of housing.
Slide. So what does this look like? All the missing middle housing that we don't have enough of. This is a great graphic that you've probably seen before. And you can probably just start hitting the slide button because we've got a lot of this kind of missing middle housing. Just kind of like do 5 seconds a slide. So we've got small apartments, we've got some quads and fourplexes, some of which are allowed to be built today, some of which would require special processes with you guys, PUDs and things like that, that are uncertain and kind of onerous for developers. So if we can just open it up in terms of regulation so that more of these kinds of houses can be built, then you get what's called a filtering effect. So that house, for example, was only single family, now it's a triplex, which has allowed a resident to stay in town and kind of generate income from her residence. So that house filtered from a new expensive house to one that services a lot of people. Hawthorne, I'm sure they were more, the rent was higher when they were brand new. And if you build a new set of them, you'd get people who want to live in and pay for a new rental, and then Hawthorne would be relatively even more affordable. And that's just kind of you're opening whole sectors of the market, even if you say just build luxury housing. So these are a lot of examples of multifamily that's already here. And a lot of these are maybe non-conforming or would be difficult to build, or totally impossible in all of the zoning A districts. So we just want to make it possible, make it easy. And then in the future, maybe there'll be legislation or motivation or the economy or whatever that can really take advantage of these things. But for now, it's the smallest, easiest thing that you guys can do to make way for affordability if it's going to happen. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Questions or comments from council?
Just thank you for the presentation. That was pretty good and really informative.
Well, so here's what I think, and we might want to take off the slideshow in case Marianne wants to pop in. To me, I think the next step is for us to decide, is this something we want Planning Commission to look at? Because that's where, for those of you that want to discuss this issue, that's where it is properly vetted. So we'll need more knowledge. For example, it may not be the easiest thing to do because Johnny has shared with us the challenges we have with infill and infrastructure. So we have to contemplate that. Denise certainly has a lot more expertise than anyone on this council around these kinds of issues. Who's that? Oh, yeah. But I think ultimately, that's kind of the next step. Do we want this to be explored by Planning Commission for a recommendation to this council? Marianne?
So first, I would like to acknowledge the work that John, Matt, and Alex have done, along with some other people, but they've certainly been the leaders of this group of citizens. And they have been working on this for over a year now. And I think this is an amazing example of citizen activism in our community, volunteerism in our community. And one thing that I noticed from the McKee Group report, looking at the populations in Yellow Springs and how we vary from the national average. And of course, we know that we have more people my age in Yellow Springs than the national average. Well, the age group, when I was looking at that report, that we have the significantly less of our young adults, 25 to 44 or something like that. These three guys are in that age range. This is the population that we need to have more of, like these guys. And so I am so proud of what they have done. And I think, as they have pointed out, these kind of changes that are happening around the country, in part because of the recognition of the need for affordable housing, and also the discrimination that comes about because of our zoning code. These are incremental change. These will result in incremental change over the future. So it's not like all of a sudden everyone on a block is going to build an ADU, or everyone in residence A is going to put an apartment. It just allows those things to be done. And yes, I think we should send this to Planning Commission with the direction that we, as a council, supports these kind of initiatives, changes in our zoning code, and to be vetted thoroughly to make sure that if there are infrastructure issues in particular, other issues, that those need to be considered as well. So I support moving this to Planning Commission with that recommendation.
All right, thanks, Marianne. And this is going to tie in nicely to our budget planning and goal setting, which is getting started next Monday. See, I want to underscore the work in advocacy and the outreach has been great. I've really appreciated everything, including the zines. So, Johnny, did you want to make a few comments? All right, thank you, guys.
Somebody's phone. Thank you. Well, I got this real long paperwork, but since I was going to Planning Commission, you know, since the beginning, I've been against all the infill. Because if we ain't gonna take care of the infrastructure, why build more houses? I know that we have spent a lot of money in the past 5 so years. I've been here almost 9 years, but we're not catching up. We're falling behind. Had some major power outages, wasn't our fault. We luckily had spare parts to be able to fix it. We looked at it 2.5 years ago, we bought the regulators. Had a water problem on East Limestone today, 2-inch galvanized pipe, found it. We didn't know about it until today. We got 200 and, let me get my notes here. We did 9,668 feet of sewer lining and inspection this year. Out of that 9,668 feet of inspection, 6,438 feet of that failed inspection. When I say failed, that means 5 years, it's going to collapse. And the majority of that is at that point right now. So what's that mean dollar-wise? Right now, if we was to put the PO in, right now, it is $251,539.58. If we do not sign that paperwork by December, that price in 23 goes to $503,600. $79.16. And we're talking about changing zoning codes. For what reason? We can't take care of what we got now. We got water issues. We got a water issue at the plant. We got new water meters that's got to be installed. We have water towers that's got to be painted because they're on their 5th year. We had 5 years left. That's $1 million back before COVID. Now we're probably $1.5 million, $1.75 million to paint the water towers inside and out. We're talking about changing, doing more infill. We're talking about number 6, copper wire. That back in the 30s and 40s, everybody had 30 and 40, 60 amps max in their house. Now, the standard's 200. You can't get anything lower than that on a house. But we've also got them in town that's 400. We've got some that are 600 on residential houses. Why do they need more power? We got more efficiency appliances. Because we got a lot more appliances. We got a refrigerator in the garage. We got a freezer in the garage. We got one in the kitchen. We got a dishwasher. We have multiple laptops. We got multiple iPads. We got multiple phones. Oh, now let's throw electric cars into it. So now the number 6 wire that we put in the 1930s and 40s is supposed to carry the load of today. We're not even through a electrical study yet, and we're talking about changing zoning codes to build more houses in your backyards. If you can't flush your commode and get it to Grinnell Road, putting more neighbors to you is not going to help the situation. We have to get serious about fixing what we have and making sure that we can get it to the places and get you guys the stuff that we need. So then if you go to what I've seen in the last 3 years, when people split lots, they ain't affordable houses. I'll tell you that. I'll be the first one to go on record and tell you it's not affordable. Split the lot, make your money, and move out of town because I just doubled the price of my lot. I can take you 5 or 6 houses in town. Guess who ate a lot of that cost? Me and the other taxpayers. I'm not a taxpayer, but as far as Public Works, because they split their lot, they didn't do what they were supposed to. I still got electric over the house. They tapped into a dead sewer main because that's where they thought it was. Well, now the new homeowner's got a problem. Well, the builder ain't coming back to fix it. I got to provide her sewer, so I got to run another sewer line. These are not problems that you're hearing on that presentation. I'm all for getting new developments. I'm all for bringing more people into this village, but let's do it the right way. Let's fix our infrastructure. Let's put in new infrastructure, and let's give the people the desired infrastructure needs that they need first. So let me ask you a couple of questions to see if I've said these to you. Staff shortage. Has anybody heard me say that one? System issues. You all heard me say that one. Multiple equipment failures. Every one of you has heard me say that once or twice. I just had one Monday. Lack of maintenance over the decades. Deferred maintenance. You heard me say that one. And you also heard me say that the village as a whole needs the best we can give them at all times. Have you guys heard of Jackson, Mississippi? He's saying the same things that I've been saying for 9 years. They're on national news right now. They're on mandatory boiler advisories. They're bringing in the National Guard to try to get water. You turn on a faucet there, you can't get nothing out of it. We're lucky. But how long is it till our luck runs out?
All right, thanks a lot, Johnny. So I want to come back to, we're not going to have any more discussion. I want to come back to, we're not making any decisions tonight. To me, this special report is to inform council about, potential policy, but really Planning Commission is the body that processes these things. But I will say that for me, Johnny, we're not going to be making any changes until we commit to infrastructure. And that's why at the beginning of all this, I said this ties into our budget planning and our goal setting. And this next year, I'm focused on infrastructure. So, but I don't feel that that's a reason not to have these ideas evaluated, to get information and recommendations, and whether we act on those or not, we have to balance these concerns. But we know that one day we want to get to a place where we can do infill because it makes sense for our village. At least I think that, you know. So this is not about deciding that we're changing the zoning. This is about getting more evaluation and feedback so that we can decide how we move forward. And I think, you know, your points are very important in that discussion. So I guess you know where Marianne and I are. We think it deserves further evaluation. How do other council members feel? I mean, we don't have to have a discussion.
Yeah,
It's kind of a yay or nay.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking into more.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, Carmen? Okay. All right. So Planning Commission has got its marching orders. This will not be a quick decision kind of thing. I can say that. Lots of things to think about. Okay. So we've got another special presentation, which has a lot to do with everything we've discussed tonight. And so I'm going to bring up Jerry Sutton, and you have a partner?
Yeah, Carol, I'll introduce
okay,
Carol
great.
Murray.
Carol Murray.
First of all, for the introduction, this is the third time that the Yellow Springs McKee Group has led a cost of living study. And we've reported to you, and the copies are available. And thanks to Paul Abendroff, they're up on the McKee Group website. That's 45387.org, and I checked it out. So the cost of living study, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the village for helping finance it, and members of McKee Group carried quite a bit, and the foundation, which we're going to report to. It's based on the 2020 census. This isn't you're not going to get insights to your gas prices tomorrow morning from this presentation. But if you have one study, which we had in 2002, you have a point. If you have two studies, which we had in 2012, you can draw a line. We now have a third point, and you start to get a trend. And so that's the reason we did this. And we were very fortunate to have the same individual that briefed the 2012 study to you guys be the chief analyst on this. And this is Carol Murray, and she'll go through it. And I'll just back up and handle any questions that come along if she doesn't handle them. So,
hey, thanks, Jerry. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. Good evening, Peggy.
And thanks for the PowerPoint, by the way.
This is not working. Thank you. Okay. What you see here is the population change for the village. Since 1970, the population has actually fallen 14.1%. You're now currently about 3972 when it comes to the population. Over this same period, both the state and the nation did increase. They had a steady increase. Median age, and we'll get into this, the part of the reason that your population is decreasing is because it's aging in place. And Marianne already spoke to that. Thank you, Marianne. Your median age here is 53.6. It's 14 years older than both the state and the nation. When you look at the age comparison for your village, almost a third of your population is over the age of 65 or 65 years of age and older. You've had a decrease over the years for the population that's under the age of 24, and that's only 23% of the population, where it used to be a lot more. Compared to the state and nation, 31% of the population is under the age of 24. Now, you've had a significant change in the number of households. You've increased 500 over the last 50 years, and that's about 33%. You've also seen a decline of about 33% when you look at the size of your household. down from 3 to 2. Now, income change, oops, I just threw somebody's pen on the floor. You've had steady increase all across the board. This is not adjusted for inflation. This is just as reported by the census. So you can see that Yellow Springs is actually a little bit lower than the nation, but we are higher than the state. Now, housing value comparison. Census reports that the median value is $237,000. This has also increased over the years. Again, not adjusted for inflation. You are 36% higher than the Ohio median, but about 3% lower than the nation. This slide is about the percentage of housing cost and the income devoted to pay for it. Renters in the village pay about 26.7% of their income for housing. Housing with a mortgage is, I can't read that, I'm sorry, is about 23%, and without a mortgage, homeowners pay 14%. Change in population. Now, this study, for the last 3 studies, we chose, and I don't remember how you came about it, but they chose comparison communities. You can see that Yellow Springs overall has had a 14.1% decrease, while all the other communities have had an increase in population. The biggest change in population was 5,000 in the city of Tip City. This is the change in median housing value, again from the census, $237,000 for Yellow Springs housing. The 2 highest, or 2 closest communities are $184,000. Those are both Bellbrook and Waynesville, I'm sorry. This is the median residential sales, and this comes from the state. This is state data here. And you can see that Yellow Springs is approximately 20,000 higher than Bellbrook when it comes to 2019 values. It's maintained since 2015. Yellow Springs is roughly comparable to Bellbrook when it comes to the median mortgage and selected monthly costs, but higher than just about all the other, well, actually all the other communities. Median monthly rent, though, you are lower. Bellbrook is the highest in the area, at least reported by the census.
So Carol, can I ask, where did this number come from? Because it does not seem correct to me.
I could see that, but this is from the census. It says reported by your residents in the survey that they took. So, and this may be a modeled number based on previous numbers. I'd have to look that up. I don't remember whether this is 100% count or whether this is a modeled number. I believe it is from the ACS. Now, these are our numbers. What we've done here is we have accumulated the utilities to try to give you an idea what those additional housing costs that you saw for the mortgage or homeowners that pay a mortgage, those are also included in there. And in Yellow Springs, you can see, well, they range here from about 160 to 217, Yellow Springs being the highest. This is your water, your sewer, your electric, and solid waste removal. These numbers came from the Energy Information Administration. They came from, Oakwood does a survey every year of water and sewer rates. And then finally, the solid waste came from the negotiated rates from the jurisdictions, and where that wasn't available, we actually called Rumpke, who was the provider for the other jurisdictions, and we got their rates. Now, this is the property tax rates, the effective rates for the jurisdictions, and you can see Yellow Springs isn't the highest at 64.09. Bellbrook is higher. I think there are 4 jurisdictions that are higher. Germantown, Enon, there was one other, both Germantowns, I'm sorry, it's 2 Germantowns. This is the municipal sales tax, and I'm sorry, school tax. Yeah, it's income tax. You can see that Yellow Springs is comparable to 3 of the jurisdictions when it comes to municipal income tax. And when it comes to the school district tax, you're actually the lowest of the 3 districts that do charge a traditional income tax. What we're looking at here is the income tax burden. And again, we've accumulated the taxes for the different jurisdictions. This is based on the median income of around $62,000 for Yellow Springs residents, and then the $237,000 for the median value of a Yellow Springs house. So you can see that Yellow Springs is the highest, but not much higher than the others. The lowest, I lost it, is Tip City 2, and I thought that was a special jurisdiction or a special district for lighting, so I would have expected that to be higher. We also did a local comparison. We ran around or called different businesses. We found that many businesses have closed that we were calling over the years. So there are no barbers in Yellow Springs, but you are the highest when it comes to haircuts. Salon-based haircuts in the village compared to the other jurisdictions. Health services. In Yellow Springs, the optometrist is much lower, so is getting dental cleaning and exam. However, medical is much higher. We also went around and surveyed grocery stores. We took the same list, we compared the same products. Across the board, you're within a few dollars of each other with the exception of Cedarville. So in conclusion, your population is shrinking. You're also aging in place. A lot of your costs are higher. A few are lower. And the cost of housing, actually, rentals, according to the census, is lower, but your mortgages and your property values are higher.
All right. Thank you, Carol. This work is incredibly timely. Just so many things that we talked about tonight reference this. Questions or comments from council members? Mary Ann, anything? Okay. One question I have, how hard would it be to get these numbers for Oakwood?
Not hard.
Okay. Because one of the things is, most of the jurisdictions that we're looking at, I guess, make some sense to me. Germantown, not so much, but maybe there's a reason. Jerry's going to get up. But I will say that Oakwood, given that what we normally hear is, we are the 2 communities that people compare and decide. So if we could add Oakwood, that would be very helpful. Jerry.
Back in history, in the 2002 study, a group of citizens were more hands-on involved, and they did an in-depth look at a 5-county area. They wanted to get comparable municipalities. Mm-hmm. Comparable in 2002. They were looking population between 2,500 and 10,000. As I said, within 5 counties, but not remote out in the wilderness and not a suburb. So like a Huber Heights that would grow with Dayton area. Socioeconomic, comparable, education, et cetera, and various occupations. And they also looked at housing value. They looked at a number of factors, but these were the determining ones. And we fixed on that, and we carried the same group of municipalities through. So the one chart that shows the population growth, they didn't control to 2 square miles necessarily. They probably expanded. And so there are a lot of variables that have occurred over the last 20 years.
Yep. Yep. Thank you for that background. And yeah, I bike in Germantown sometimes. But I guess in particular why I'm centering on Oakwood is we hear all the time how we're so much more expensive than Oakwood, but I know they have a lot of costs buried in their property tax and other levies that they have. So if there's an opportunity to get that number in there, that'd be cool.
Specifically looking at taxes or?
Yeah, taxes would be very helpful. So, and utilities. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. Gavin, go ahead.
I'll just say there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. Could totally warrant a longer conversation. Not going to do it because there's a bunch of things on the agenda, but just thank you. Interesting stuff. Hope we can do it as a board.
All the numbers you would like to flow through.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we appreciate you and appreciate this work. Okay, we are going to move into old business, and we are, first of all, going to discuss the noise ordinance. Oh, I'm sorry, manager's report. Yes, we're going to move into the manager's report.
Thank you, Brian. I covered my announcements earlier, so I'll get into some of the routine messaging. I know COVID was, you had a conversation around COVID and other issues. We did see an increase in the viral load. However, the state, the CDC tracking system is reporting less counties and a medium and high transmission rate. So we're seeing a spike. We're seeing a spike on our wastewater treatment facility. Overall, the case numbers throughout the states continue to drop compared to where we were 2 weeks ago. So that's a situation we'll just keep monitoring.
Yep.
Municipal broadband, all the splicing is done. I think we're going to have our first home hooked up this week.
I saw that in your report, really?
Yes, I think this is the week. It's got to be the week. Sidewalks went in, cemetery is in. We got good momentum.
Indeed.
Lawson Place, it's fully leased. We haven't resolved the parking issue. I don't know how we're going to resolve the parking issue, but we'll see what the tenants come up with. But that's going to come off the project list because we're not done completely, but it's fully leased, and we're monitoring for the next couple weeks, months until we have new initiatives going on. Renee, update, in my report I included that the US EPA team experienced delays due to illnesses, a death in the team. They reassured me that they're going to have the statement of basis soon. I will be a bit more diligent to make sure that I'm following up with the US EPA with regular calls and regular emails to remind them that this is an urgent matter for us. We had Johnny make reference to this village-wide power outage. We had two, actually. We had a Sunday outage, which was something completely out of control. But if there was equipment failure, and this equipment failure highlights the vulnerability that we have as a community, that all of our electricity comes from one location, from Snipe Road substation. That's our single point of failure. We've talked about having the need for additional circuits, another switch station on the south side of town, so that we could build in resiliency in our grid. We continue to highlight that as a critical issue, particularly as we look to make economic development moves and improvements within our village. There's an increase in demand for electricity, and having a grid that's acceptable to somebody crashing into a pole and knocking the village out of power is just a vulnerability too much to endure, too much to take on. So we're thinking about that in the future. Over a year ago, we made some good, we scored good points on a FEMA resiliency grant. We're doing engineering for that to gear us up for the next round of competition, and so we are better prepared to handle that grant. So it's something that's on our minds constantly, and we apologize to a resident. I know with Lisa, we were texting back and forth because she's got very expensive equipment that needs to be running all the time, and not just Lisa and the brewer, but a lot of businesses in town. So we had a power outage on Sunday due to equipment failure. Post outage inspection resulted in discovery of damaged regulators, which required immediate repairs, and that's why we needed to have a planned outage for Wednesday morning. We were very proactive on all our communication. We sent out emails, social media, did the one call, and we did not call people at 9 a.m. We did it at right before dinner time. So we did all the things that we needed to do to make sure they got the message across. And I want to thank Johnny, Ben, and the crew because they had done so much work in advance of the repair to minimize the outage. And we identified the time that would be the least disruptive. So Johnny and the team got the outage to under 4 minutes for everyone. For some was 2 minutes. So they worked fast and diligently. And then I celebrated with them at the Waffle House.
Nice. At 6 a.m.?
Yes, at 6 a.m. Like 6 a.m. I was part up. Noise ordinance, I'm going to hold off on the noise ordinance piece of my manager's report because we're going to have a discussion. I think it's an important discussion. And then the last piece that I want to talk about are organizational things. I continue to look for a finance director. We change our strategy. We've identified all the certified fiscal officers in a 5-county area, and we sent direct emails to fiscal officers. So we hope that strategy.
Yeah, I was going to say,
wouldn't call it
our
that.
new reputation.
I think that those folks have access to the space. They know the key employees in that area, and so I'm sure there's some there that are looking for opportunities. I also have an announcement. I have 2 other things I want to touch on. One is that we'll be doing hydrant flushing next week. So, that's part of our exercising our hydrants and testing the system. And so we don't expect water discoloration, but we have to announce it just because it stirs water up. There are 2 other things that I want to, that were brought up during today's meeting that I want to touch on because some of them might have been a surprise to you. It's not my habit or practice to surprise you with things. One is, Mark Heiss talked about a potential MOU for a village property. Some of you are aware that we had a presentation a few weeks ago that Yellow Springs is a destination for hikers, bikers, folks that use the Ohio Buckeye Trail. One of the chief complaints about a segment of this customer base is that we do not have accommodations as they're coming through, whether they're showers, sleeping accommodations. And so there's a lot of enthusiasm to build out amenities in the village. We've had discrete conversations about potential sites, what type of services. So we'll make a more formal presentation, but I didn't want folks to be surprised. Where is this coming from? Mm-hmm. There's a high demand for amenities from folks that use the trail. And we're thinking about creating amenities for that group. The second one is, Johnny mentioned about the sewer relining. Everyone's costs gone up. We are fortunate to be part of a cooperative purchase agreement that council approved 2 years ago, Janet, 2 years ago, which was the HGAC contract for sewer relining. It's been an effective program for us because it's pre-negotiated rates per feet of sewer relining. The team, the contractor, they're going to increase their rates in the new year. So whatever we've negotiated through December expires. Any new contracts that we engage post December will be under a new rate, which it would take this project that's around 300,000 to 500,000. So that's something that we're going to be bringing to council later in the year because the economics and timing are working against us down the road. We know these systems need to be relined. We've had success in the relining work that we've done in our sanitary sewers. It had not only reduced the backup into people's homes, but it's also reduced the infiltration and inflows. And those are key improvements that we need to make to our infrastructure. So don't want to be surprised by that. That's something that we are planning to bring to council, but that's an important piece to highlight now because you heard about that significant increase in costs. And we've seen those increases in costs just in everything else that we do. Any questions on manager's report?
All right, well, thank you. I do want to say again, I really appreciated the communications around the electric outage and the proactive nature that led to us being able to address it quickly. And, you know, whatever we have the capacity to use, you know, our capital fund to work on that electric, let's do it. Questions or comments? Nope.
None for me.
Marianne? Okay, looking good. All right. Okay, so as we move into old business, and I know several people are here to comment about the noise ordinance, what I'd like to do is just brief framing from Josue and Chief Burge, and then allow the citizen comments. And keeping in mind, this is a discussion. We are still working on this draft ordinance, so we have some things out there. My understanding is that there was a richer conversation with our local business folks. There's been some good feedback from residents as well, and ultimately we want to achieve that proper balance. So Josue, if you want to say a few things, and then
Yes, Brian, that's correct. As we're reviewing the issues with our ordinance, and we have a draft that the team has put together, we wanted to connect with the business community, because we've seen, as I've reported in the past, we're seeing a transformation in many of our businesses. They're responding to COVID by allowing greater business activity happening still on the property, but in the outside spaces. And I think that that's what more of a post-COVID environment looks like, because air quality is just better outside. You talked about it earlier. So we're seeing that transformation in the businesses. We have to be sensitive with any changes in policies that are going to, may adversely or unexpectedly hurt a constituency or the other, while also respecting the needs of our residents and respecting the complaints that they raise. So we've had this conversation. Where we need greater conversation or agreement on are around the timing issues. We discussed some timing issues, proposing time frames that can be amenable to both for constituency that lives on downtown or near downtown. So one of the proposals is shifting the times from a Sunday, Thursday to have noise, quiet hours, if you will, at 10 p.m. and for Friday and Saturdays to end at 11 p.m. Also changing around what times noise activities can start. Now, there's some that are exempt. They're written in the draft ordinance that we presented. Another is on the benefits of having clear decimal readings versus not having decimal readings, and the benefits that either one offers. Officer discretion, a variety of things. And so then the business owners are here and they can weigh in on any of those topics. But one thing that is certainly clear that any noise ordinance must address is the cumbersome and burdensome requirement of having this specialized training that our current ordinance has, that only one person out of Olympia, Washington, or somewhere in Washington offers. So doing away with that requirement and using technology that it's either self-calibrating or has a calibration method that's much easier than a current ordinance requires. I think there are also elements that are, or chief complaints that are not covered in this ordinance. One is the motorcycles, the amplification, or the buskings. We heard someone's interested in busking. So I think that instead of us putting together a draft ordinance where you're voting on, I think they've married a conversation. And we're here, and business owners and residents are here, so.
Okay, great.
Did I miss anything, Paige?
Paige, I just wanted you to speak specifically to the enforcement piece, or maybe elevate that a little bit more, the challenges you guys have.
The challenges for the existing ordinance, as Josue mentioned, is that currently we have, how many of us have actually looked at the ordinance we currently have? I think it's probably 6 pages long, give or take. And it dictates on there that you have to have an NCO or an NCA. And the NCA is the person that would administer the training for NCOs. And it's this whole roundabout way where it was very expensive to become an NCA. And if you weren't an NCA, you had to locate an NCO, and it's just very convoluted. So I lean on my partners in law enforcement quite a bit. I have a couple of folks that I like to refer to as mentors, one of which is in a comparable community. Not that anyone is comparable to Yellow Springs, but as close as I could find, population and such wise. And that's where I located a draft of the current ordinance that we're looking at now. And so I reached out to him, spoke with him about the lack of decibels that we would be removing from the current ordinance. And you know, he responded exactly as I expected him to, and what I would hope that we would do here, or know that we would do here, which is, hey, we don't have an issue with it, because right now an officer goes out, if a noise is unreasonable, they issue a warning. Hey, turn your music down. We need to control the sound for the sake of the neighbors nearby or whatever, and they don't end up having issues, so they don't have to pursue enforcement from there. So currently, right now, we are unable to enforce the ordinance. It's a variety of reasons. Not only do we not have the training, it's also calibrating of the devices, no training on the actual devices. I could go on and on. But with this ordinance, yes, there would be some room for discretion. However, if you look a little further down, you'll see that there are some criteria to lean on for the enforcement factor, such as complaints. So how many complaints, time of day, which is obviously outlined in the ordinance, intensity and duration, which I think is a critical piece, right? If you have something that's just a blurb of a sound for 30 seconds, that's going to be done and over with before an officer even gets out, versus, hey, I've got a group of individuals down in this location, they've carried on for 2 hours. Those are two totally different things, right? So all those would be criteria in pursuing enforcement after a warning would occur on the new ordinance. So hopefully that fields some questions or concerns, old and new. Any follow-ups?
That sounds good for now. Thanks, Chief Burridge. All right, so Jerry Papania, I know you're here to speak on this. Come on up to the mic.
I'm Jerry Papania. I live at 214 East Whiteman Street. And I've been there over 30 years. And I'm a retired engineer. And during my career, I dealt with industrial noise as it related to employee health, and also how it related to the community. On a personal level, in 2008, my neighbor took a piece of air conditioning equipment that was located in an interior mechanical room in a building and placed it outside next to my property line. And they were warned before they put it out there that it didn't meet the noise criteria. But yet, they went ahead and did it without a permit. And that continued for 4 years before the equipment was retired. And the village never enforced the noise ordinance because of what the chief mentioned about the specificity with the calibration, the training. You know, it was just untenable. So I suffered through 4 years of a sound level that was significantly above what was allowed by the ordinance because of the village's inability to enforce. Okay, so we all need to realize that noise is more than just a nuisance. It's a health issue too. And the World Health Organization has a specific paper on how community noise relates to health issues. So a couple things I want to bring up. One of them is motor vehicle noise. And I think we're all aware of the motorcycle noise in the village by people who come into the village with modified exhaust systems. And I spoke to the previous chief about this, and he said that the officers were instructed not to stop motorcyclists if there were if there were 2 or more cyclists riding together. A few months later, I talked to a patrolman and asked him how he enforces a noise ordinance. And he told me that he had been instructed not to enforce the motor vehicle noise ordinance. I really feel sorry for the folks who especially live on Xenia Avenue, where most of the traffic is. So one question I have is, how is the motorcycle issue going to be dealt with as we move forward? Because I think there's a lot of people in town that that's a hot button with. The other thing I like to mention is a lot of our neighboring communities have signs up at the entrance to the community that says noise ordinance enforced. We have signs up that says no compression braking for trucks, but nothing that adjusts the noise ordinance. I think a sign in itself may intimidate some of the motorcyclists that have modified exhaust systems from revving their engines while they're in town. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's an exemption in the proposed noise ordinance about emergency signals, and I don't know if it specifically says backup alarms, but I would consider that an emergency signal. In the past, there has been delivery vehicles and Rumpke coming to empty dumpsters at 5:30 in the morning. And what's that?
You're getting into 4 minutes here.
Okay, so I think that needs to be considered as well. And lastly, I'd like to mention that for those of you who don't know, there are free phone apps that you can install on a phone, on a smartphone, that are decibel meters. And some of them are accurate to within 1 decibel, especially if they're installed on an iPhone. So if you get into situations where there may be some controversy on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, that could always be referred to. You know, the existing ordinance at night is 45. You know, somebody could whip out a cell phone, whether it's the complainant or the officer, and try to validate what their decision is. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Is Betty Kelley still on?
Yes.
Okay, I know she was on to speak on this too. Can we?
I am here.
Okay, we can hear you.
That's good. And you can probably also see me.
Yes.
Wayne would also like to speak. I will just mention to Jerry, we had the same issue with Rumpke and we just called them and they rerouted and they decided they would come at 9 in the morning instead of 6. Anyway, so we read through the new draft. I am Betty Kelley. My husband Wayne Gulden and I live at 224 Corey Street, also known as the house across the street from the old fire station. We are in the Central Business District. We lived here for 30 years. I wrote a letter that should be in your packet because noise downtown is an issue. Our biggest issue is with Miguel's or Trailtown Tavern. I'm not sure what the proper name is, but they have music 3 to 4 times a week. It's amplified. And when I'm sitting in my backyard, or sometimes when I'm sitting in my house with the doors and windows closed, I can still see them. I can hear them. So it goes for a number of hours. My reading of the ordinance now, the way the draft rate is stated, says that I'm going to call and I'm going to complain. Perhaps an officer will come out, perhaps not, which has happened in the past. And they will decide if it's too noisy, annoying, whatever. But I assume they're going to be there for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, but they're not going to be there for 2 hours, which is what I have to deal with. And I don't really want to be run out of my house. In the letter in your packet that we wrote last summer, I suggested that perhaps disallowing amplification would kind of fix the problem. We also wrote or included Chief Burge in our comments, and she seemed to like that because it would be easy to enforce. I mean, I can speak to the motorcycles, I can speak to because we also have a lot of them on Corey Street, and the cars and the whatever, but I don't see that. I see that being very hard to enforce. The amplified music seems like it would be easier to enforce. I'm turning it over to my lovely husband, Mr. Wayne.
All right, thanks, Betty.
Thanks.
Hi, Wayne Gulden.
Hello, Wayne Gulden, 224 Corey Street. I assume that the page and a half of the new one replaces the entire 9 pages of the old one. Is that correct?
It's just a start.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, the goal is to simplify.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I've got some of the same concerns. Like it looks like there's no enforcement at all possible during the daytime. The hours are strictly for nighttime, if you read the draft closely enough. There's no differentiation between downtown and residential areas. The question Betty brought up was who decides if it's really a violation or not. That's going to be the officer, and they may have a different set of motives than what we might have.
My other question, my thing is that if I call them 4 times a week, are they going to continue to come out?
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, Chief Burge mentioned the current 634, the lack of the NCA and NCO. But the side issues, there's an exemption for celebratory events. You can give a license and they can make a lot of noise. Is that posted somewhere? I don't think I've ever seen it.
There's an exemption in the existing ordinance, so it's just a carryover.
Yeah, so that's a carryover, Josue said. But yeah, I think at this point, flagging these issues will help us come back with something that is responsive. So.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It's late.
It's late.
All right. Thanks, Wayne.
Yep.
Ellen Hoover. To the mic, please, so that our at-home audience can hear. Yeah.
Ellen Hoover. I live on Dayton Street, across from the laundromat. I've lived in town twice, the first time 1969 to 71, moved back in 1980, moved to the house we're in 2007. In 1969 and 71 and 1980, the traffic into town, and of course out of town, was far different. By 2007, it wasn't really what it is now. Now, the noise being adjacent to the central business district is a totally different thing. I'm not going to repeat anything that what has been said, but I agree with Jerry. I agree with Wayne and Betty. We have the same issues. What I would say is our traffic is equal to, if not more, on the weekends for what you see on Xenia Avenue because of the tourism. It backs up, if you're not aware of this, to way down 235. We can't get out of we park on the street and we can't get out. But the issues about noise are we have triple glazed windows, 1-inch doors, wood door storms, everything's tight as it can be. 3 brick thick interior walls and exterior walls. If we can hear the noise inside, it is amplified and it's way too loud. And sometimes we can't hear the TV or talk to somebody in our living room. So I'm looking, this ordinance that you have, I realize is a starting point. I would like you to know that from the point of view of living next to a central business district, I expect some noise. I expect special events. They're fun. I look forward to them. I like street fair. I'm probably the only person you know who lives near that enjoys the people and the traffic and the noise of it. What I don't like is not being able to be in my own yard because somebody's decided to have a concert at Rose and Sal's and you can't hear over the music. So as Betty said, we have to live with it day and night. And I'm not happy anymore with that. So as the police chief will tell you, I am that person that phones, and I phone often. It has started to slow down a little bit. I think maybe some of the business owners recognize that the neighbors aren't happy, but I'm looking for more specifics to this, something that says, no, the police respondent does not have to make a decision about it's too loud, or we don't have to wait until 10 o'clock at night. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Any other comments? Mark Heiss?
I want to thank Chief Burge and Josue for facilitating a wonderful conversation last week. The business owners are aware that at times it can be too loud, and I do know that at least the one business owner that has had a number of complaints actually has instructed his employees to stand at his property line and measure the sound and have the bands turn the music down. The idea of not having any amplified music at all in the downtown business district just isn't today. We are living in an area that is developing. Part of the strategic plan, as I understand it, and I'm not sure the term is correct, but for Yellow Springs, is to create an entertainment district between the downtown district and Millworks. That's happening. It's happening. What we are seeing are the signs of a strong, vibrant, and healthy downtown. The music that's being played and the entertainment that's being offered are going to help offset some of the median age trends that you see of people wanting to come and live in Yellow Springs. The DIP report that we just saw from the McKee Group is an important measurement. And so I would urge you to please continue as you have to balance the needs of the residents and the businesses. For the record, for those who don't know, I'm a resident, not a local yet. I've only been here 17 years. And I'm a business owner. I don't have live music. Don't think I ever will. Not for a t-shirt shop. But I believe that the businesses that are now thriving because they are allowed to have live music that may not have made it through COVID, and there are a lot of businesses that you'll notice have closed, at least they're surviving. One thing that I would like to say too is that I live on Xenia Avenue, and I moved there knowing that I was going to have noise, and I knew that there was going to be motorcycles, and I knew there were going to be gravel trucks, and I accepted that. But to say that entertainment is an easier target than a motorcycle with modified pipes is not an acceptable reason to target a certain group of people. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark Heiss. Lisa, did you want to say something? Lisa Walters.
Hello, I'm Lisa with Walters with Yellow Springs Brewery. I just want to say that we support this new ordinance and this new initiative to bring clarity to the issue. As a local business owner, we try to be very sensitive to our neighbors, and having some clear rules are important for us so that we can make some decisions on how we handle events or anything that involves the noise. But I also urge you to kind of to think about what the town needs as far as a downtown business district and what the businesses actually need. They need a little flexibility in making some choices because, I mean, we want to have some healthy businesses around, and we just need some flexibility on making those choices. So that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so I guess I'm not thinking that we should have a discussion because we've got a lot of people.
I would like to make another comment. I'm sorry.
Really quickly, Betty, please.
I will. I would just like to respond to Mr. Heisey, who has lived here for a while, and he expects all of us residents to just suck it up with the music and the noise. And I guess I think that I should deserve to have as equal a life as anybody else. We get along with all 7 businesses behind us because we collaborate and we all understand that we need each other.
Okay, thanks, Betty. And we're definitely thinking about everybody's concerns. Okay, so we got a lot to process and to reflect. There will obviously be more extensive discussions, I have no doubt. So thanks, everyone. All right, we're going to move on to, Gavin wanted to talk a little bit about scheduling a work session.
I would like to schedule a work session.
Yes. Very clear agenda item.
So is this more complicated than we get out a calendar and talk about it, or is this something
So
that?
I think, tell us what it is, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I mean, at the last meeting, I brought up, I mentioned two, one around, you know, I'm not sure what exactly the right words are, but public safety philosophy, and one around housing and economic development. And I guess I would like to talk about I feel like it's relevant given our, you know, conversations earlier tonight about the sort of public safety philosophy.
So is that the one you want to start with?
Sure, let's start there. But I'm open if other people want to start somewhere else. For people who aren't here, basically the idea here is let's have long enough conversations to talk through complex issues.
Okay, so let me recommend, let's start at our goal session on Monday, right? That won't be the only thing that we talk about. And then let's kind of segue into like I agree. I think that and the affordable housing should be elevated to longer discussions. That makes sense to me. And I feel like I've gotten that from other council members as well. So how about we do that? So next Monday at the end, we'll talk about next steps on those.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, joint meeting with the elected bodies, I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be September 29th. We have a draft agenda in the packet. I don't think we need extensive discussion here. The idea is that this is going to be the first of potentially other meetings. Hopefully we will set a precedent for coordinating in a way that was meant for the Yellow Springs Development Corporation. Hasn't really turned out that way, but I love that we're doing this. I think all the elected bodies are on board. So the proposal for this first meeting, and Judith Hempling, who's our liaison with the schools, Marilyn Moore, who's our liaison with the township, has looked at the draft agenda. They think it looks good. It's basically about each body presenting their needs, their operating expenses, and then looking at, you know, upcoming levies and so forth. And then we'll transition into an initial discussion about opportunities for collaboration, et cetera, and then talk about next steps. Any thoughts, questions from council about that? Okay, looks good. Okay, so then Finance Committee, that rolls into what we just talked about. And actually the Finance Committee has not met since the last meeting, so we'll have something on the agenda for the next meeting. So that rolls us into new business. And so we were going to talk a little bit about community volunteers. Carmen.
Cool. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. So I want to talk about the role of volunteering for municipalities, specifically in communities that are around us, like Delaware, City of Kettering, City of Dayton actually still has a pretty robust program for volunteers. Volunteering for your town, your village, your city creates a sense of being able to affect positive change in your community and where you live, especially if you have a needed skill set. And I would argue that everyone can volunteer in some capacity or another, and not just municipal volunteers, but volunteering in any way. It helps to connect us to one another and can help build a sense of belonging to something bigger than us. So that being said, I would like to do some more work with council to discuss what a policy for volunteering in the village might look like. I know that in a lot of municipalities, the people who volunteer do things like volunteer to repair sidewalks. And even if they have a specialty like a business that pours concrete, offsetting the costs for those municipalities to have those kinds of basic maintenance needs met. So one of the things that I talk about, is the, staff having to deal with, I don't want to call it the minutia because it is important, but there are things that we need taken care of in the village that can be addressed by a skilled group of volunteers who are working where they're the strongest. And that has to do with volunteer coordinating and who the coordinator is and being able to kind of vet people to help guide them in the right direction. But it's always, in my estimation, an attribute to the community to have people who want to volunteer in whatever capacity. As long as there are clear parameters set and we're really deliberate in what our needs are so that we can convey that to the community, people who want to give their time and expertise to helping us kind of build a better place to live and offsetting some of the simpler things, quite frankly. So it frees up staff to do their, I don't want to say more important jobs. I'm not going to say more important jobs, but to do the work that they're hired and to do the work that they're hired to do for the village.
So I have a thought. I'd like to work on this as well. So maybe you and I could collaborate, put together a proposal. I think it would be good to run it by Josue and Johnny and the leadership team. Absolutely. And then bring it back to council. Yes. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that article. We also have a sample of a volunteer agreement, and we can find some others. So let's do that.
Yeah, we have a lot of good models. We have a lot of really excellent models from a lot of places that are around us.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Carmen.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's see how we do over the next week. And so if we can get it ready for the next meeting or in the next couple meetings.
Placeholder, got it.
Okay. Okay, work session. So on the table, Judy put together the goals of next Monday. I think it's pretty straightforward. We are looking at prioritizing goals for 2023, and we want to integrate that with the budget, keeping in mind that the federal money is not flowing like it used to. Budget constraints are tough, and we have infrastructure to focus on. So I think if anyone has anything specific related to next Monday, send it to Judy. She'll collaborate with me on a final agenda. Any questions or comments? Okay. Yes.
I absolutely did not get this to Mary Ann, so Mary Ann, I will be sending that to you.
Okay. Yeah, and it's pretty basic, like what we've done before. Okay, so House Bill 563. This is that terrible bill passed by the usual suspects, as these Republicans are called in the State House. They're the ones that wrote the resolution about sanctioning Canada for their COVID protocols and stuff. So the intel we're getting is that it's not going to pass. And at a minimum, if it did, worst case scenario is everything's grandfathered in. So the policies we've done around transient guest lodging and trying to preserve the character of our community will stay in place. But the more moderate Republicans did ask us for feedback about what we've done, because a lot of times what they do to appease these folks is modify the bill and try to make it better. So we've had a great group, Kevin, Josue, Denise, Judy, and myself working on this. Some of the materials that we submitted before, which I think killed the bill in the last session, that's what was in the packet. And our goal is to get together a cover letter, share our policies with these folks to be proactive. And then the other piece is we're going to work on, there were a lot of municipalities that testified against this bill. Notably, the only people that testified for it were the realtors and Airbnb and those folks. So everybody else municipality-wise testified against it. So I think that, and so we think we can get them to sign on. We're also going to work with the Ohio Municipal League, who's been against this as well. So just wanted to make sure you guys had an update. And any questions about that? All right, local advocacy does work. All right, sometimes. Okay, Planning Commission, did I see we have a nomination?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to do all the verbiage correctly, but our current serving chair is doing a great job and would like to nominate for another 5-year term, Frank Doden.
Okay. And I think we all know Frank Doden really well. So normally you would sing his praises, but I think we all know Frank's doing a great job.
And if a second is needed, I second.
Okay.
I'm shocked, I did not know that.
Yeah. See, I know, it is exciting. Okay, so Judy, if you could call, we got a nomination in a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Indeed. Queen.
Yes.
Thank you. DeBoer Leonard.
Yes.
Brown. Yes. Stokes.
Yes.
Tausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other boards and commission updates? Yes, Gavin.
So I think it's appropriate, just a quick planning commission update. The last couple meetings have been very light. We've made a couple of approvals for, and there's a Airbnb on Xenia Avenue, and then there was a business that we approved. I think we talked about at the last committee meeting. Actually, from earlier, we do have a barber now who's allowed to be in town, so we can update our housing study, or our housing cost study.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's been pretty light planning commission meetings. Obviously, all information's available online for anybody who wants to follow up.
Thanks, Gavin. Anything else?
And I'll just say, Gary Zaremski and I talked about YSDC. We will have something for our next second monthly meeting. I guess you had talked to him about doing one, and either he or I have been not present in the last couple of meetings.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to like kind of reconnect on YSDC. I've read the minutes and I followed things, and yeah, there are some things I'd like to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, future, yes.
Mediation group made a decision.
Oh, want to say anything about mediation?
Yeah, we had been looking for a coordinator. I'm not sure whether Josue, I don't know, I guess it hasn't been formally announced, is that correct?
That's correct, no announcement.
Formal public announcement has been made.
So Diane Diller has accepted the position for the coordinator for the mediation program.
Wow.
Diane comes with a long background in various peace activities, including certification for nonviolent communication, and has lived in the village, wow, I don't know, about a dozen years or so, I think. She's very energetic, very excited about taking the position. And, you know, we haven't actually met, I have not met with her since the selection has been made. So
Great.
I know that there's some plans in the works for doing something probably in October, but I can't say anything more than that.
All right, thanks, Marianne. That's exciting. And I've appreciated Diane Diller's recent focus on detoxifying relationships and so forth. So great philosophy.
She's also hosting nonviolent communication workshops at the Coretta Scott King Center, and they go through the fall.
Yep.
Or into the end of the year.
Great. Okay, future agenda items.
We have really quick from Cultural Commission. So we at Public Arts and Cultural Commission discussed the fall VITA, and we think that we have a nominee, and it's probably definitely going to be more than likely Elaine and Keith Kresge. They just finished the little library at Gaunt Park. It is beautiful.
Wow.
It's It's got, you know, a little gabled roof, and it's got the it's features squares from quilts on the outside, and they just finished it, and it's great, and people have already been over there perusing it. So they're probably going to be it. Also, Napoleon Maddox is a hip hop artist who kind of, I would describe his stuff as definitely hip hop, also jazz, like traditional jazz, spoken word. Primarily, he's actually from Cincinnati. He's working in Europe, which kind of seems to be where that kind of music is received. Let's see, he will be here in October on the 11th, 12th, and 13th. So I guess Napoleon reached out to Cheryl, Cheryl Durgans, and in combination with Antioch College, the 365 projects, Yellow Springs School District, Yellow Springs Community Foundation, World House Choir, we're going to bring Napoleon here the 11th, 12th, and 13th. There will be a combination of events, including a workshop with Yellow Springs Schools, probably Tuesday 2 to 3 p.m. community gathering, and an overflow event at Coretta Scott King Center, and a community performance on Thursday evening with World House Choir and Trone Threat and Sorg, which is Napoleon Maddox's DJ. So he's in town for the Ohio Underground Music Festival. There's going to be more stuff in the newspaper. I just talked to Cheryl. She's working on getting a flyer out, and we can put that up on our website, right?
Yep.
And on our social medias. Let's see. We also discussed Helen Birch Bartlett's 100th anniversary with Bill Kent. Bill is the archivist for the Glen Helen Association. We all know how awesome Helen Birch Bartlett was, but he discovered that there are several pieces in the Chicago Art Museum that were a part of her personal collection, and we're talking about the great French impressionists. And he talked about maybe the village working with the Chicago Art Museum to bring a couple of those pieces here for her 100th, she'll, I guess, be her 100th birthday, which is next year. I really had no idea about the extensiveness of her collection. She liked French Impressionists, and so she went to France and bought a whole bunch of paintings, and it's one of the largest collections outside of France.
Wow.
And it's at the Chicago Museum.
Cool.
I think that's pretty much, that's pretty much it. If that's not it, Amy will text me. Let me know.
All right. Well, thanks, Carmen. Okay, future agenda items. We've got plenty. Anything that
we need to do CRB.
Yes.
Yeah, please. I forgot. I've been, whatever. So CRB definitely. There is news to report, but I wanted to get it to cohesive.
Okay. Anything else? All right. It's been a great meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
not all at once.
Okay. Just real quick.
Yeah.
On this last thing, Judy and I were talking about this on this future agenda item. So part of what we want to try to do, I think, just as a plug, I've been trying to keep track of how we're doing on time, just to get a sense. I was going to report back after a few meetings, but part of what happens at these meetings is we're totally tired by now, right? So then future agenda is like, let's just get out of here. If we can collectively, and Mary and you two, work on trying to communicate with Judy during before agenda planning, when you get your email, then we could do better at keeping on time and knowing how long we're actually going to have, and then it helps citizens know how much to engage.
Well, we had more time for legislation, at least on the agenda I saw, or I didn't look at it carefully, I guess, but there was no way we were going to do that noise or any of that discussion about the ESC in 15 minutes. So that was just a mistake, but that's great.
This wasn't it wasn't a commentary on the thing. Sure. It was just saying, hey, everybody, I don't think many of us have been engaged enough.
If we had allowed enough time for that discussion, we would be right on time. There's no,
cool.
Nothing I think went too long. Okay. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Gavin never wants to second. Huh? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Take care.